Beef is up on stands again. This week we're going to be building a front gearbox mount. Now it has to be completely custom made because basically standard mounts on the front don't work because the gearbox is being pushed forwards, but I'll show you that in a little bit. As a bush, I was looking for different options and I found these on eBay. So originally these are for a Ford Escort or Land Rover and stuff like that. They're pretty universal, to be honest with you. They come in different grades and different colours and all that sort of stuff. But as I've got 80 Sure on here already on the top strap and it's not holding firm, we're going for solid urethane, so effectively solid mounting the front of the gearbox. Now I'll put a link to the company on eBay I got these from in the description below. They turned out to be pretty good. I didn't know when I ordered these they actually make them here in the UK. I just assumed they imported them, to be honest. But no, they actually make them in-house in the UK. So if I'd have known that, they could have possibly made me one a little bit lower profile. That would have been a bit nicer to fit. However, I've already got these, so we're going to roll with it. Yeah, let's use a Escort engine mount and make a new gearbox mount. In the back of my Bug is a T25 091 6-rib gearbox. Now originally these are a side shift, so we've converted this with a bird conversion nose, which means it now shifts at the front as a bug would down the tunnel. The whole gearbox has been moved forwards by a couple of inches, so that causes problems with the original gearbox mount at the front. It's effectively been removed and I'll show you that shortly. As a consequence, we've created this strap across the top and a bush we actually made a couple of months ago to hold it steady. However, I'm not happy with how steady it is being held. It does work under most power, but when I give it full beans, it's moving too much. So we're going to be beefing up this again today, making this hopefully urethane with some urethane bits if I can find them. But the main gearbox mount we're going to be doing today is the one at the bottom, which I'll show you shortly. If you want to know more about the gearbox setup, it's actually covered in my second video, so a long time ago now. But I'll put a link to it up above if you've not seen that, if you want to learn a little bit more. So underneath we've got the gearbox. As we move forwards towards the front of the gearbox, we've got this huge great bar. I had to double this up to make it strong enough, and that basically stops the gearbox from dropping, holds it in place along with the top strap. And towards the front we've got our bird conversion nose and what would be an attachment to a standard front gearbox mount. Now because the gearbox has been moved forwards, the original gearbox mount has been completely removed. It crashed on the nose. And I was intending on building something to replace it, but never got around to it. I never even cleaned up what I did all those years back. So what we're going to do today is remove all these horrible excess bits, get the angle grinder out. I'm going to clean up this section here and weld and fill this hole because I want this to be solid. And we're going to look at building something that's mounted to the bottom of the floor pan here and mounts to the gearbox nose. First thing I've done is mount my new bush to a piece of angle. It's an old bracket from a garage door and about 5mm thick, so it's a chunky beast. The bolt goes through the bottom, which we can cut the excess off because that will be the lowest point on the mount underneath the car. And this is going to mount on the front of the gearbox on the original nose cone mounting, something like that. Now it sits a little bit lower than I'd like it to, but it's no lower than the mid mount and the engine mounts already. And they've never really hit the ground, so it's not been a problem as such. So we need to build a flat platform here for that to sit squarely against before I can actually measure where to drill the holes for the gearbox mount to go there. And then we're going to plate up the sides of this to strengthen it as a box section a bit more as well. Because the top, or what probably would have been the side of this mount, isn't completely flat, I've got a raised section in the middle there, so I'm having to use a spacer just so that it sits flat, which is a bit annoying, but not a problem. Next we've got the bracket I made, so another piece of angle, chopped down. I've cut our thread down, so hopefully we'll thread on. There we have it. One chunky beast. So it should fit something like that. So the bottom plate I'm holding will attach to the gearbox. The top plate I'm going to weld as a ledge for the bush to crush up against and I guess pull down against. That'll be welded to the bottom of the tunnel and to the back of the torsion bar, the bar that holds the torsion beams in place. So I have to be careful not to put too much heat into that. I'm building it to the face of the gearbox, so it sits flat against the gearbox. So I'm not sure if it's entirely horizontal, or it's hard to know because of the profile and the shape of the tunnel here. But that's kind of irrelevant anyway, because we're building it for the solution that's already in place, so it's building it for the gearbox. That's the rubbish welding done, upside down and with one eye. Now I've got a bit of a problem here. I'm going to have to bolt the gearbox to the bottom mount, and there's nowhere to actually get the bolt behind to attach it to. So the plan was to weld it to this basically, and then thread in through from the front of the gear, from the back of the gearbox, I guess. I could put a hole in the top plate, but I still can't get access behind it. It's just too tight. There's no way that's going to happen. So that top plate's going to have to slide forwards by at least 5mm to give me some more gap here, so I can comfortably get a nut down in between. Now when it's on the ground the gap opens up a little bit, but when it's on the car you can't get a nut in there. So we're going to have to modify this slightly and just move it forwards that way a little bit. I wanted to keep the full face of the plate against the bush. The problem I've got is if I push the bush forward, the top bolt then crashes on the tunnel, so it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. So all I can do is have this slightly offline from the centre of the bush, but never mind, I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. Excellent stuff. I've trimmed the top plate down about 5mm front and back, so it goes forwards about 5mm as well, so I can get the nut in there now, and it all sits flat still as well. Alright, time to get the welder out. I've got my relative position for the top plate now, so I've tacked on the nut and the mount can now be screwed on from below. And I've got a decent gap so I can get some nuts in there, weld them on and put some thread in. It doesn't need to be quite so big, so I'm just going to trim that down a little bit, make it a little bit narrower. Don't see the point of having such a huge platform on there if I don't need it. More like it. Now I've got a little bit of a problem. I wanted to try and do this before I attach the bottom mount, because it's going to make access even worse. Now basically these holes in the front of the gearbox, I was planning to use a 12mm bolt, but the holes are not 12mm wide. So a 10mm is a sloppy fit and a 12 won't go through. So I've got the gauges out and it measures, as far as I can see, as close as I can see, about 11.5mm, which is a bit random I guess. So access in there is incredibly tight, so I can't get a drill bit in to either side, especially for the top hole, to make them any bigger. So I was looking for other options. Now I got a old urethane front mount, and these come with little sleeves in. So I take the sleeve off, which looks like that. It's a little metal ring, and the sleeve actually goes in there pretty much perfect. So it measures, as far as I can tell, about 11.3. So it's a pretty decent fit in there. Unfortunately, that does mean that with the sleeve in there, I can only use an 8mm bolt to attach the gearbox mount. I did want something a little bit chunkier than that. So I'm going to roll with these for now. So I'm going to get some high tensile 8mm bolts to suit, and we'll attach 8mm nuts to the side of the bottom part of the mount. We'll see how it goes, but it might be something I revisit, so I'd like to open these up a little bit and use 12mm if possible, but taking the mount off is going to be relatively quick and simple to redo. So yeah, rolling with 8 for now, and we'll modify it later should we need to. Well, that'll teach me not to wear proper welding gloves and a hoodie. Right, we're nearly done, so I'm quite happy with that. So basically I've shaped the bottom part so it goes around the bush nicely. I'll give it a little lip on the front, so if it should impact something, hopefully it'll jump up and over rather than rip the whole thing off like a hook. So fingers crossed that won't happen. Put some strengthening sides on, and so the angle's a lot stronger. Filled all the little holes so it doesn't look like a bit of garage door anymore. So I just got to trial fit it now to make sure I've drilled my 2 gearbox mount holes in the right place, and if assuming it fits and works, just give it a lick of paint. So we are done. I've used a couple of cut down axle bolts to hold it in place because they're tensile, and a couple of nuts at the other side. Now they were quite tricky to fit, so in the future when it comes off I'll probably weld them onto the back of here, so it makes it a bit easier to hold them in place. But other than that, no major problems at all. I've chopped down the bottom nut here, the bottom bolt as it may be, which is attached to the bush. Height wise, it is no lower, in fact it's not as low as the existing bar, so I don't have any issues or I don't have any concerns about clearance as such, and it's about the same as the floor pan itself, so I think it'll be absolutely fine. Right, so we're going to move on to the top strap now, and make that side mounting as well. So on top, the bush we made in recent months is coming off now. I've loosened the strap, and basically I'm using this old pretty knackered old urethane gearbox mount. But it's just about the right shape for the top of the strap. It's even got a slot cut in it, which I didn't do, so it should fit over the ridge perfectly. So I'm going to clamp that down. I just need something basically rigid and urethane there as support for the new front mount. So we have our solid bush now on the top strap. That's now supporting or backing up the new front bush, and I guess the solid urethane mount on the front as well. So fingers crossed we're on top of any up and down movement at the front of the gearbox, which is where I was running into trouble. So when I was launching off the line in first gear as hard as I can, that up and down movement was causing me problems. So fingers crossed we're sorted for that. I guess I'll update with another video in the future, showing if it's working well or if it's not, what we do next. And it'd be interesting to see if there's much more road noise coming through the car, so vibration. I'm kind of used to having an air-cooled engine on a Beetle with urethane bushes, and it does increase the noise in the car, and it feels more vibrating. But this car is so loud to start. I just can't imagine it'll be any worse. I can't imagine that's even possible. So yeah, be interesting to see how it goes. But I'll update as I can, and hope that helps if you're looking to do something similar. Cheers guys, take care, bye bye.